Good morning, everyone. Thanks for being here. My name is Miriam Hewitt. I am Assistant Director at the Center for Public Service. And today, Dr. Felipe Cruz is leading us in one of the CPS Speaker Series session entitled Between the Digital and the Physical, Augmented Reality and Public Scholarship. Dr. Cruz is an Assistant Professor of History whose research focuses on the history of technology in Brazil. His forthcoming book, Flight of the Toucans, Aviation and the Conquest of the Amazon, investigates Brazil's unique form of frontier expansion, tracing how a technocratic state deployed aviation to aggressively colonize the Amazon, often pushing into the territory of indigenous people who themselves came to use aeronautical technology in resisting advances into their land. Felipe has long been a practitioner and advocate for work in the digital humanities as a means to innovate the ways in which we teach, research, and publish. He started this work as a graduate student at the University of Texas at Austin, where he first developed an augmented reality app for the curation of historical sites and co-founded a digital publication called The Appendix, a journal of narrative and experimental history. Since joining the history department at Tulane, he has expanded his digital scholarship practice beyond public history, exploring the use of emerging technologies in the realm of research and teaching. In 2020, he was chosen as Tulane junior faculty nominee for the Andrew Carnegie Fellowship to further develop his ongoing work in this field. Thank you so much for being here, Felipe, and I'll pass it on to you.
All right, sounds good. Let me go ahead and share here my slides. Okay, let's see. There we go. Okay, you guys can see everything? Okay. Sorry, Medium, did you say something? Are we good? Okay, we're good. Okay. All right. So well, thanks everyone for coming. Really excited to talk to you guys about a lot of these ideas, and actually, hopefully, despite my usual excited, long-winded descriptions of these projects, I hope to leave some time for discussion, because more than sharing some of this work and thoughts with you guys, I'm actually looking forward to a discussion and getting some ideas about a lot of these, some of this work that is still, in development. So I'm going to go a little bit beyond just the AR here. I'm going to talk about the Curator, which is the kind of my current AR project. But I also want to talk about some other technologies that I'm using in my kind of digital scholarship practice, in both on the kind of the research end and the teaching end of the work. Because one of my main part of my philosophy about how to approach all of this is that they all work together, right? They're not isolates. So anyway, let me get started here. Some kind of general roadmap. I just want to talk a little bit about this broader vision for how digital scholarship should be deployed. I'll talk a little bit about augmented reality and the particular application that I'm working on, and then some other work in both the research and teaching, right? And on the teaching end, especially this course I've taught a couple of times here at Tulane called DIY History, where students work together to create a museum exhibit and learning different skills that go not just digital, as you see, but because we also work at the archive, and we work at the Tulane the engineering school's makerspace to produce kind of physical artifacts as well. So let me just put a couple of broad thoughts about that, and I'll try to tie it back around after I describe these different projects and go back to the work in AR at the end here. Right, but the kind of main points, kind of philosophy for me behind how I understand or how I think we should work in the kind of digital scholarship or digital humanities is way of rethinking interdisciplinarity as well, right? Just beyond, not even just, and that's why I'm kind of using the example here, kind of like going back and forth between digital humanities and digital scholarship more broadly, right? Because as I'll talk about, some of this work has the potential to go beyond just collaboration within the humanities, which already has been very fruitful, right? People with different backgrounds, like a lot of most kind of digital projects are enterprises that require collaboration, right? That they're already unique in this nature, right? The larger scale, their scale, and ends up bringing people from different intellectual backgrounds and different skills, right? But part of what I'm proposing here, as you see, is that we should also use it as an opportunity to expand this idea of interdisciplinary as being not just about kind of more closely related fields, for example, within the humanities and social sciences, but also with the sciences, right? With engineering, as working with the humanities. And I think the digital scholarship offers great potential for this, right? And the other big theme here for me is the kind of dissolving the barriers between the types of work that we do, right? Like as academics, we teach, research, publish, right? Hopefully here at Tulane also perform some form of public service. And as you see, I think some of these tools and some of these projects and work you can do can actually dissolve the barriers between this work, right? And combine and make so for some I hate using the word synergy, but between these facets of your academic work, right, where the teaching melds into the research, melds into the publishing or public service or public scholarship, more broad public history in my case, right? And finally, I'll be talking more about this at the end, also kind of providing a means of increasing accessibility and diversity in intellectual production, meaning providing different platforms, right, that might cater to people's different backgrounds or different ways of learning or working, right, that beyond our traditional types of production in a way that I think can engage more people than might have been engaging in this kind of intellectual production in the first place. So let's just do a little bit of background on AR, because I don't want to assume anything but about people's knowledge of this, even though it's become more known as a technology, right? So augmented reality, what is it? So not to be confused, of course, with virtual reality, right? Which is kind of a full immersion in a virtual world, right? You have a headset, you don't know what the hell's going on outside outside around you, right? The people bumping into things, as I did when I took a demo of a VR headset once at an event. I'm too expressive to be cloistered in a VR environment without interacting with my physical world. So, and then augmented reality, which is, the in between here, right? It's a kind of a virtual enhancements to our real world, right? Our actual physical space, right? Sometimes, I won't go into the details here, but sometimes also refer to XR, extended reality, right? For some particular use cases. And you can see some kind of three, generally speaking, main types of methods for using it. One is geolocated, right? Which can be the simplest one from a technical perspective, especially on the kind of back end of things in computing power, right? So it places digital artifacts based on GPS coordinates, right? You like look around in your phone, for example, right? And you can see things floating in space based on where they are, right? Their distance from you, like renders the image in perspective, for example, okay? Then target recognition, which is essentially computer vision, right? Recognizing what the camera of your device is seeing, right? Understanding the patterns, and then by recognizing it, being able to interact with it, I track it in the space, right? I have a recognized image that I'm doing some interaction, altering some way in this virtual environment, right? And as I move my phone up and down around it, or a headset, or whatever it might be, right? It will follow and keep everything in place in relation to the recognized image or object. And also the kind of more broadly speaking, like spatial ones that are not tied to necessarily like actual location on Earth or recognizing something specific, but just recognizing some boundaries, like from like of the space around you to interact with it. I'll give some couple examples here. Okay, so geolocated, for example, I think the most popularly known forms of it are these games, right? People talked a lot about in the past. Pokemon Go, more popular. I think it was something that came into people's came up in the media a lot, especially people kind of, you know, trespassing into places or getting hit by cars, whatever, by being distracted by it. And also this one that's actually the same company but much older. It's kind of the basis before they created something like Pokemon Go, which is called Ingress. This is kind of it's purely based on location. You don't look at a camera and see kind of things in your environment, right? It's a different form here because there's no visual element to the real world around you necessarily, but it's about location and where you are in relation to places, right? So it's some basic premise where there's this world with these force fields that you have to control, and there's two teams in the world, just like Enlightenment and Resistance, and they have these portals that you have to take over, you know, and defend. It's kind of like a territory, battling for territory type game. Which has been around much longer. So you go around, you have to go get near these places within like 20 feet of them to interact with them, right? And be able to kind of take long walks here. And this is actually kind of something I did extensively while developing my kind of first bit of work in AR, which was as a young graduate student at the University of Texas at Austin. They have an institution there called the Digital Writing and Research Lab, right? That kind of brings experimental new projects and areas of research every year, right? And assigns these graduate student residents or faculty residents as well to them. I joined them in 2015, I believe, and they had the themes for the year, which were, I think, archiving, augmented reality, and I forgot what was the other one. They asked us to rank our preferences. Like, I'm a historian, I was like, archiving, digital archiving, and they gave me augmented reality. I was like, what do I do with this? I never. He's like, what? So me and this group that was working on it started kind of exploring current uses, right? And we saw this and kind of took the geolocated AR as a basis for our first project. And it was interesting to experience different forms of it. Our team actually started playing this game around campus and trying to kind of, you know, see how the community interacted with it, right? There's kind of live chat, people are talking on these chats while they're organizing. They meet in real life to kind of strategize about how they're taking this particular territory, going to like mass walks with like, you know, 15, 20 people going around to do this together, right, as a team. And it actually, I was joking about the kind of news articles about people getting in trouble with Pokemon Go, but I have to share this as a thought on some of the potential issues with how AR or XR it can bring in the public space. And the first application I'll describe here that I worked on AR was that very much about open public spaces, because I got in trouble in this once while using this with a friend. We were just kind of like learning about it. I was walking home from from the office to my apartment in Austin in this broad area, and kind of, trying to interact with this particular landmark on campus. Had my headphones on, listening to the news, wasn't paying attention. And suddenly I look up and I see 4 police officers running full speed at me, which point I pull out my headphone and hear just saying that, "On your knees now!" And one of them is pulling a taser out as they're running up towards me. I just dropped to my knees while flinging my phone away, which like pulls my headset out. I got handcuffed, thrown on the floor. They ask my name, shakily say my name. They pull out my ID. Turns out they were looking for someone that made a threat to someone in the building there. Apparently, I matched the description, and they had been yelling at me to, calling me out to like come speak to me from distance. I didn't hear them, and they started running towards me, thinking I wasn't complying. Right? So there's things to be considered in some of these mechanics of this. But this is at the time, like experimenting with these different forms of it, experiencing them, is how me and this kind of research group at UT developed our first little experiment in this, which was essentially a geolocation-based AR app, which led to this was a time where there was the ongoing debate about removing the Confederate statues that were very prominent on the central area of the UT campus. Jeff Davis right there in front of the iconic UT Tower, and they were hedging and removed one or the other, and there was debate and protests and so on. So our first little project was actually to use geolocated AR to interpret the kind of the heritage of white supremacy on campus, and through Confederate monuments and references throughout the campus, right? So you'd pull your phone, you're looking through your camera at the actual space around you, and you see these Google Maps type markers that you can see from the dimension how far they are and tell you how far you are, 500 meters, 20 meters, whatever. And you walk up to them, and there will be the statue or whatever monument it was. You tap on it, and you get links to further information, interpretive text from our team, right, talking about the context of the placement of the statue and everything that you can kind of expect here as a form of like public outreach and education around this subject. Okay. So, and I guess I went into this, but one thing, I guess I didn't explain the spatial AR. Maybe people have done this. Have you ever Googled an animal and then got offered by your phone to see it in your room? So that's one example of spatial. I should have put it first, but yeah, if you do Google from a list of 100-something animals, you can place them in your space. It kind of recognizes the floor a little bit. This is my son playing with a wombat. He was curious about a wombat, had forgotten about this. I Googled wombats to show them, and because of some cartoon, and then he went to pet the wombat in his little augmented reality here. So this is a fun trick to play. Google an animal and then click on view in 3D and view in your space, and you can kind of get to this. So the project I was talking about here, geolocated, is kind of inspired me about the potential accessibility of the technology. I developed the app within a semester by using some pre-baked platform and just having to create a database and some form of like code interaction with it, but it wasn't overly complex, right? And it opened my eyes to something that could be used in projects not by just big corporations, right? But something that small organizations could deploy, right? And so this leads to what I'm now calling the curator, which as a name, 80% despise and 20% really love, and I'm open to suggestions. It sounds it accentuates a part of my accent in Portuguese that is often mocked. But so it's an app for curation of artifacts, museums, public spaces, right? Has its roots in this geolocated AR project that I talked about. And it's based instead, for now, on image recognition AR, okay? But I plan on expanding on that as I'll talk about a little bit to include geolocation. Its main goal is like its central goal is creating accessibility. Okay, AR is still kind of complex. There is some pretty more and more kind of relatively easy entry platforms to being able to create AR content. But again, they're proprietary and paid, right? And my goal here in creating accessibility is to create an open source project free for education, right? That allows anyone without any technical expertise, and I'm not just talking about academics, college students, I'm talking about K-12 education as well, to create AR content by using a simple web application where they go, add images that they want to recognize, the software to recognize and interpret, and from there actually be able to just open the app and open their exhibit and interact with their space, right? So this has its roots here at Tulane, where I first used, let me go ahead a little bit here. I first used with a course that I'll talk a little bit about, I'll talk more about later, called DIY History, right? I already mentioned it actually, where I worked with students, it's collaborative, all the students are working on the same project, right? Which is to create some form of a museum exhibit or some form of interactive, digital interactive artifact about a particular historical topic that we're researching. And in the first time I taught this, which was over a summer, one of the ideas that came up was the way I kind of organize the class, I present different technologies, right, that can be used on the subject once we've done some research, and the students have to come up with exhibit ideas or interactive ideas based on those technologies, and then pitch them to the class as a potential addition to the exhibition, right? And they have to get training in these skills, and that I showed AR as a potentially accessible tool, and this is what actually came up. The students, we looked at while working at the Latin American Library, we saw some historical maps, and one of Tenochtitlan, right? Capital of the Mexica, or the Aztec empires, people will commonly think of it. And they want to create an interpretive map of that. So I'll show here a little mini demo of it at work here, because it'd be really hard for me to hold my phone and a piece of paper in front of the camera for you guys here. But this is just doing a little demo. I don't have this is actually like a really big map. I think it was 4x4 feet print that we put out on a table that people could walk around and explore. But I somehow do not have documentation of that as it happened. So I just did a quick demonstration by recording a smaller, printout of the map on my table that you guys can see here. So you can see the app recognize the map and put these like little markers on the city and a couple extra buttons or elements, right? And you can walk around it. So imagine this is a big map that people are walking around, right, and seeing the markers. And you can click on the little markers to get interpretation of different parts of the city, right? This is a pretty simple implementation here that we did very quickly with students, but you can also change the environment, right? So if you clicked on the help button there, you'd see that you can click on the little floating cube with a piece of the codex there, and you get like additions to the environment, like Diego Rivera's portrayal of Tenochtitlan as the mural, right? And actually a different version of the map, like a colorized version of the map overlaid over the city, right? And instead it tracks the image in a way that, it can follow it. So if you're walking around it in perspective and everything, right? I jokingly call it version 0.0.0.1 beta, because this is the first kind of experiment in it, like that we did for this class in particular. This is kind of where it started the current iteration of this project, right? Because this class was in collaboration with both the Latin American Library and the Makerspace, right? Because the students worked there, learned some skills that they might use for the exhibit, to create an exhibit, learn how to 3D print and use laser cutters to create physical artifacts. and work directly with the archives, with the artifacts at the Latin American Library. So what led from there is the creation of, wait, I have, go back here. Use of this at the library for interpretation of the exhibits they have, right? And this is the first iteration of it used in a more public form after this class, is a photography exhibition by a Brazilian photographer, João Farkas. The library had just acquired some of his collections, right? And held this exhibit. He came to give a talk, and we created its interpretation, extra layer of the museum, of the exhibit, sorry, that could be used here, right? So this kind of a way of like simple way of really just rethinking the idea of the small label in a museum piece, right? Format, a creator, short description here, right? And extending that, right? So this is the kind of first iteration of this, and current iteration of this, I should say. And you can see, I don't know how well we can see there, but we're holding the tablet, looking at the photo, and some icons appear under the photo that you can tap on, right? There are kind of floating icons that are hang under each photo as you look at them with the tablet that we had at the exhibit, or by just installing the app in general. And there would be, for example, some text, like an extended curatorial text about historical background around the photo, other aspects of some stories of the people portrayed, right? One thing, because a lot of this was about kind of the kind of destruction of the Amazon, this big expansion into the of farming and mining into the Amazon in the 1980s, right? So the other thing we did, because so many of these photos showed these like space in the Amazon, the other icon there is a map where you could see a satellite photo of that particular location where the photo is taken today, right? To compare what it looks like after 30 years of all this destruction in the Amazon, right? From the 80s to now, 30 years, geez, 40 years, I guess. I'm turning 40 soon. Wow. So you could actually kind of see the impact over time, and the little film icon there, button, which actually brought up the photographer, a video of the photographer giving his own interpretation, telling the story behind the photo, and talking about the entire circumstance, right? His thoughts on it. So it was a way to like bring the creator of the artifact you're looking at directly to you, right? Talking about taking a photo, the story behind finding a person, what happened to them, how they were, their personalities, right? There's a lot of these were portraits. And we thought it was, just an interesting way to kind of extend the ability to like engage people in different ways, right? With what we have in museums or exhibits. So where does that go from here, right? So before I kind of go into a short description of these other facets of the work that surround the augmented reality work here, is to make this accessible, right? I mean, this is something that took a lot of work programming wise for me, right? I could do it because I have a background in IT. I've worked as a programmer, right? So somewhat more accessible to create the entire kind of back end of this. It required us kind of customizing media and lots of things, but it's still very weak in the sense that it has a very unappealing graphic design. There's one thing I can never be accused of, is having any good aesthetic sense, right? For example, is part of the reason why these projects can't be, one person efforts, right? So we really wanted to see is like, how can we expand this in a way and make it useful to a broader community, and make it more useful broadly for education and public engagement, right? And the idea was this kind of like opening, kind of creating a very universal data architecture, right? And I mean here, the structure of the data behind the database that feeds this extra curatorial content into the images that the app recognizes, in a way that makes it really easy to understand and flexible in interpretation, right? So you can create then a simple user interface as in the form of a web app that anyone can log in and say, okay, add artifacts, right? They add images that the app should recognize. Okay, then add these little buttons of extra content, right? Like, okay, add a video, add an overlay, like you saw on the map, right? Like you touch the map and it becomes the colorized version of it, right? This was the case here, for example. I'm sorry, I don't have a good video of that at the exhibit itself, but when you did the maps and the videos, it wasn't like necessarily on your full screen. Some of them would just be covering the photo itself, right? So the frame of the photo on the wall became the extra content you're reading. So that people can just go up, upload these images, add extra content, text, video, image, links, whatever, right? And quickly create curatorial content. Like I'm talking about even in a K-12 classroom, someone can go take a poster on the wall, snap a photo of it, upload the photo, create all this extra, and add all this content to it, and then immediately open the app and start looking at it through that way, right? So it's kind of a very easy way to create AR content. Now, in terms of like, this is the kind of the technical aspect, right, of building this out, like how to make it accessible, have the publishable app, and have this web interface where people just create their content, right, in a simple drag and drop type descriptions in. But I started thinking, like, how can we make this useful more broadly, right? I mean, this is kind of right now what you're looking at is within the white cube, right? And kind of take what I think, according to my partners, I think it's like a term that artists use, I guess, or curators to talk about these environments of in art, right? The white cube of the gallery or the museum, and make it actually more interactive and useful with a broader community, right? So the idea here is to actually create a broader, like a more extensive way, instead of having atomized exhibits, groups of content that belong to one physical space, is to actually have different places, people, and institutions interact in the same world. Okay, so for example, we can take and my kind of, and this is something like I want to do as a public service course here, kind of bringing the DIY history course that I was talking about and turning to a public service format, is to go to small local cultural institutions, right? Kind of my dream kind of a test case for this, something like the Backstreet Cultural Museum, okay? Digitizing, documenting some of their artifacts in their collections, right? But then using a broader data structure, there's no just like, here's an image of something and here's some descriptors and interactive media about it, but actually creating a data architecture that has objects of people, events, places, and artifacts. And I'm simplifying it here, right? But if you have, like, I love this one detail in the that they had in their exhibit of a cooler, like a rolling cooler, right? And a photo of a gentleman that used to walk around with the second line selling beer and water from it, right? And I always, like, that always stuck to me as like, this is something I love about this kind of museum, right? This kind of way of honoring this one man that the neighborhood knew, right? In a way that he wouldn't in any kind of traditional museum or historical, institution. So I'm taking this example, but you can imagine a musician and their instrument, Indian chief and his suit, and things that happened out in the history of the city, right? Artifacts, people, places, events, right? So this is where the current iteration of curator becomes a also not only just a target recognition AR, but a geolocated AR. All right. So taking that example, right? You have the artifact, great. You can go to the museum, look at the artifact and get the little extra buttons, but then you have, as the extra buttons there, extra connections, the people, right? And events and places. So you can see events. Okay, let's click at events. And you can see it's like, okay, this particular artifact's related to something that happened, this thing that happened, thing B that happened and thing C that happened. which happen at X, Y, and Z places. And you can say, take me there, right? You click on it, you get directions, you start walking on the city where you're seeing the geolocated markers for events related to the artifacts of these local cultural institutions, and not just one-on-one exhibit, but having them collaborate, right? In a way that they have the same entry for a person, not just completely separate exhibits, right? So that whatever artifacts different and events that different institutions have about the same person, same historical figure, are connected, right? So I could like approach this from a myriad ways from any kind of historical perspectives. I can walk around the city and just have like all events open, right, unfiltered in my app, and just look around and see markers everywhere, walk up to them, tap, read about it, right? Oh, sorry, I just hit my keyboard here. And go to the event, see, okay, what people were involved in this, right? Click, learn more about them. What other events are related to this? Let me walk to this other place and learn about that, okay? Or what artifacts are related to this, right? So if I click a person, I can also, see what objects, artifacts are related to them, click on those and say, oh, head to the museum. It's 0.9 miles away from you, and you can see it, right? And then you can walk up there and get the same kind of AR curation of the objects, right? Of the artifacts, the images themselves, right? So it's a way to create, like bring the different cultural institutions and kind of separate artifacts and stories, right, that are spread throughout the city in different cultural institutions together in the actual physical space of the city, right? And I think this is something that, of course, requires collaboration between different institutions, right? And this is what I hope we could come in a little bit. Let me kind of like jump ahead a little bit, because I know we'll just have a few minutes if we're going to keep any discussion, right? Miriam, so the way I see this all connecting here is by using some of the kind of some of the efforts of our community of researchers at Tulane, right, and how their particular knowledge of the culture and history of the city, right, using skills from beyond just the kind of a traditional base of knowledge of the humanities here, to bring in people who might have better insights on how to apply this from a technical perspective, but also to bring the teaching and public service aspect of this into it. So I'll briefly, I can't really go into this right now, but one of my other projects is called the Pocket Archivist, right, which is the attempt to create a really small, affordable device for archival digitization, right, based on completely open source software, right, and that can be used in places without electricity, right? It's very light, can run on a battery, can allow on the field recordings of oral histories and digitization and processing of documents, inspired by my research in many cramped garages in Brazil at another time for a different project, right? So this is something that could be used to actually help bring this beyond just cultural institutions, but into people's homes and personal collections that can be added to this broader history of the city. Okay, and I can't really, don't really have time to go much into this, but happy to talk about it in our discussion here, right? This can be another form of bringing collections that are not in the public, right, and preserve them from destruction, but also make them available through this AR end of things. So this is marrying the enabling research part of the kind of digital practice here with the public facing part through the AR application. And then the other part is, like I said, teaching and teaching public service. And I'm going to skip a lot of things here about the prototype of this device that I've been working on to talk about this course. Sorry, lots of technical background that I thought that I'll somehow manage to get through. Okay, so to talk about the course, right, that I mentioned, I already described it. But basically, the students kind of build these like their own kind of skill learning path based on their interests and based on their abilities, right? So it takes the form of small certifications as badges. Okay, so they're interested in a particular set of skills, right? They can pick that and have the learning materials as modules to learn about a particular skill that they can use in this kind of a form of research or public scholarship, depending on what they pick. So we wanted to like go beyond just like, I mean, I showed them all sorts of different forms of creating interactive digital presentations and timelines and interactive narratives through interactive storytelling tools, all sorts of things, but also physical, and how to use laser cutters, 3D printing software for AR, right? And in the form of these kind of like try to gamify a little bit so that they engage, right? They have to create these badges. So to get their basic 3D printing badge, they have to do the little logo that I made up of the course, you know, the pen with the gear, right? With their name. They have to kind of put the design together, go 3D print it, and you know, that's their grade, right? And earning this skill in the class, and so on for this, right? And I have some photos here of us working at the LAL, doing the, you know, and the makerspace, learning how to use laser cutters and the 3D printers and so on, right? And some artifacts that the students produce, right? Like a reproduction of a stereoscope and stereographs from the Latin American Library, right? That they had in their exhibit, and people could see these three-dimensional photos from the 19th century, along with these kind of ways of like people to create archaeological rubbings, like the ones we have in the collection at LAL, right? It's kind of more geared to a younger audience. So the idea here is to take this, right? Take this course, take the other pillar of this, and make it into a service opportunity where people go to do historical preservation in the community, go document, digitize some archives, and do oral history interviews in our communities and in our small cultural institutions that then create the data, right, and the media that goes into the augmented reality application, right, into the curator, and enable people that, you know, otherwise would be in the database for the application, right? Famous people, important people that are in museums and have artifacts in museums, and whose lives and events, right, per the app are well documented, and we see all over the city, and bring people that are not represented by larger institutions, right? Small families, neighborhood figures, right? And bring them into this history so that people who are trying to learn about the culture and history of New Orleans, walking around using this app and walking from event to artifact, and from artifact to event, and exploring the city and its collections and its history, will also get the people that have been kind of excluded from this broader history, right? By pulling all these efforts together here, using the kind of teaching of these skills to help with the bring some of this history into the public knowledge, right? Also as a service of historical preservation for the city, together with the kind of public scholarship or publishing aspect of it, the AR app, right? Along with the technical aspect of this other project I'm talking about, the Pocket Archivist here. What is all the point of this, right? It's part of it, like I said, is about also diversity of people's backgrounds, learning styles, and skills, right? Not everyone, not different forms of writing and communication, right? Not all communication is written, and not all written communication is a paper, right? It can take different interactive, innovative forms, right? And using these as actual writing assignments sometimes, and giving them different kind of tangible skills that might be useful in their career to here from the perspective of teaching, right? So just summarizing here, this is how kind of it all comes together through the course, for example, as a broader project for our community, right? Bringing research, teaching, and publishing together, hopefully for the benefit of all different aspects of this and for all the actors involved. Anyway, I'm over already, so I'll stop and we can have a chat, which is more important than me just rambling here.
Thanks so much, Felipe. So
Thank you.
we'll open it up to your questions, comments, experiences you'd like to share. You can just unmute yourself.
So do you have as a thought for, hi, by the way, Stephen Hansen, I'm one of your colleagues in the Science, Medicine, Technology, and Society this summer. So do you have the thought of opening this up to a broader, almost like a wiki? I mean, maybe not completely a wiki, but a database that's added to not just by students, but by others?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, at two different levels here. One, naturally, this to out of principle, but also for its own sustainability, has to be completely open source from every side of this, right? And this is one of the biggest challenges right now is the actual AR rendering core of this. I mean, I can make a database and a web UI for people to add data to it, you know, whatever. That's simple, an API for it. The AR rendering of it is far more complex, right? And so many proprietary platforms that are changing. I've looked at some of the stuff I used and tried in 2015. A couple of them like just led to dead websites. They're big startups with $130 million, Silicon Valley startups, and then disappear, turn into something else, disappear, right? They cost licenses. And just in terms of open source sustainability, just for everyone, it's not just a matter of paying, it's a matter of it's not owned right by the community, right? It can disappear, it can change in a way that breaks everything. So that's the one aspect of it. The other one, what you're talking about is that, yes, like I want this to essentially be one big database of people, places, artifacts, events, right? In a way that it doesn't, I'm using just New Orleans as the case study, right? For doing it. It's a particularly rich place to do such a thing, right? But no, to just be one common database that I could, then people could filter by, for example, right? I could just have everything on, right, and walk around any place, and if there's content, it's there, right, and it will alert me to it. I had a student researcher that was working with me on this, had a great idea actually, which is to just have the geolocation part be able to send notifications. So even if I'm like not thinking about this and I'm walking somewhere, I can get a push notification for, hey, there's a historical event near you. You want to check it out, right? Here are the directions. But no, to be able to bring everything together, bring all the different content together. People, of course, might allow them to select, no, this is private, this is for our own classroom, whatever, of course. This is just for our own little exhibit, but offer them the opportunity to want to join the broader thing, which, leads to specific problems. Like you don't want people to double entering events, double entering people, you want them to collaborate. So this trickier, right? Like how do we deal with the public aspect, right, without people overriding work, like that's where the wiki moderation type aspect of it would have to come in, right? But to be honest, I haven't gotten quite that far on how to open public collaboration beyond more managed collaboration of people we already work with, which is, thank you, it's something important to think about. Did I actually answer it? Sorry. Okay, yeah.
Hi,
Hey,
Felipe. Sergio from CPS. You were here doing a maker space with our name badges. So thank you. Two little points that may be related. The first one is the new Meta collaborative commercials that are on TV, where folks are kind of put the thing on and collaborate together. And then the second point is our work, and I work, for those of you who don't know me, I work with service learning, the opportunity to help some of our museum collections do some of this. Is that doable? Is that attainable? I'm thinking about, what the Historic New Orleans collection is doing did with the Notre Dame exhibit. I mean, both of those seems to me, with a little bit of tech background, super, super exciting. So what are the possibilities of actually, leveraging your skill set and the opportunities and facilities and resources that Tulane has in maybe helping some of those museums, or even here with us, being able to collaborate together with this augmented reality?
Yeah, I mean, it's necessary. I mean, the heart of, you can have all the tech you want around this. The actual basis of the project are the institutions, are the people, right? And it's something that it cannot be developed really by a small group because the content's at the heart of it, right? I think, there's all these exciting ideas about opening it to a broader public and dealing with personal and family collections and so on. But this, it has to start with a collaboration with institutions that have some resources to help further the entire project along, right? I haven't really been able to do as much because I am mostly working on my own, other than some collaboration with students. I haven't been able to work on it because I need to apply for grants for one, right? I need a real programmer, not just me working on this, right? For example, and also because I'm coming up for tenure next summer, and this none of this can counts any points for tenure, so I had to essentially abandon it for a little bit so I could, keep my job. But unfortunately, it's not real, like intellectual production as far as the kind of standards are today's standards for tenure go. So yes, like the expertise of the institutions is critical here, right? The expertise and the content, because I might I spent last semester or no, last spring working with 2 students that were interested in a project and just wanted to kind of work as research assistants on it, developing a data model, right? I'm saying places, events, dates, people. I mean, if I pull up the chart of the database architecture we created around this, it's 20 different tables with 50 different linkages of how these things can relate to each other and interact with each other and so on. But this is my idea. I might think I'm a great reader of archives as a historian, but I'm not an archivist. I'm not a curator either, right? They have very different ideas about how the metadata is used, right? How they would have great insight about the essential data architecture part of it. They have the content, the expertise in digitizing it, the expertise in interpreting and curating it, right? And especially people that deal with collections related to local history have the actual knowledge of the history. I'm not a historian of the area, right? I'm just bringing kind of this idea and technical aspect of it, but I'm a historian of Brazil and technology. I can collaborate with people, but I don't have the background for using this. But essentially, and I think you were talking about how can we all work together to further this, right? That's why I thought I think it's a matter of collaborating with institutions that have interest and resource and kind of for doing this, people that want to, people and institutions that have the time and interest and content, right, and expertise. And then next step would be to kind of rewrap the kind of teaching and the public service aspect of it to reach a broader community once it's more matured. And that requires a lot more nuance, right? It's one thing to work on archives. It's another thing to then put students out doing oral, histories or anything like that. This is something that I want some anthropologists on, right? I want, some if it's a lot more serious, how you handle people's personal memory, history, identity, right? It's not something you just tinker with lightly, right? So I think that there'll be the steps kind of working within first, kind of finding more collaborators within Tulane, work with even the archives here first, reaching out to some institutions in the city, kind of develop more the concept and the technical aspect of it, then broaden it to a community, right? And be publishing it, right? Having people use it as well. The people experiencing it too and their feedback, right? Matters a lot. And money. I got to apply. I applied once for ACLS digital extension, and I was a finalist, but it's for more established projects, right? Digital extension. So I got to apply for an NEH at least, or some other money around. And quite honestly, I haven't been able to work on it because all of this comes back alive for me August 15th when I submit my tenure case and I can work on these projects again. Is that what you're actually asking? Sorry, I know I'm very, yeah, okay.
Hello, can you hear me?
Hi, Rick, yes.
Nice to meet you, Felipe. My colleague Dan Sharp in the music department told me I needed to say hello.
Okay.
I'm director of the Digital Media Practices program, and we're very interested in the potential for AR in our program as well, and want to collaborate on these kind of things. I'm more of a media artist and composer, and so I think about these things from those perspectives. And one of the things I got interested in this year during Mardi Gras was the idea of an AR Mardi Gras float. So you could have a mobile sculpture that students design, perhaps, it might have paper mache aspects of it, but it could have a QR code on it. And if you have a, AR app on your phone, you could see this animated sculpture above the physical sculpture through your AR app. And it would allow students to kind of participate in that space. It's a little bit different way, of course, lower cost from a material perspective, and a different set of skills that allow them to kind of put their art into a public space, in a mobile public space as well. And I think that that's very exciting. But it also strikes me that you could take those kinds of exhibits out into the community in little, like, wagon floats, or a car that has a QR on it, and you point your thing at the car, and up above the car there's any kind of messaging or any kind of digital product that is taken out into the city. And that can be an art thing, or a scholarship oriented or political thing as well. Have you thought about any of those kind of applications as you explore your use cases?
A little bit, to or at least not necessarily with the AR as much, but my partner is an artist, and so ends up there's a lot of cross collaboration when these ideas starts happening, because I'll tell her about some technical aspect of what I'm doing. She's like, oh, and 6 months later it comes back around. It's like, could we have this painting do this and then change the environment around it? I was like, yes. And the next thing I know, it's like
Exactly.
4 a.m. and I'm like soldering electronics and which is really fun, and it actually gives me a lot of creative ideas about how to do this, right? And by the way, it's been on my to-do list to come to talk to you guys for a long time now. But what you bring up, it's like, yes. Here's the thing, right? I'm speaking all from perspective of what's my world, history, right, and so on. But this is a key thing for me in all of these types of in all of these projects. Okay, the course I'm talking about, even the pocket archivist thing can be a little more specialized, but definitely AR and the course and the kind of whole building of digital skills. One really important thing for me is subject agnosticity, right? Like, how can we make sure we're not putting a fence around its potential utility, right? And its potential audience, its potential users, right? So this is something that's actually important in terms of what Sergio says, how do in different stages of collaboration, right? I don't want to make a decision in data architecture early on that closes some major possible use case for it by structuring the ideas wrong about it, right? So people, event, places, I'm talking like a historian here, but there's a conversation I'd love to have with you about these kind of ideas of, I was like, there's no reason why the same thing cannot be used for content creation of other sorts, right? The principles are still the same. A target should be recognized, or a place, a GPS coordinates, or a image target should be recognized. Media that goes along with it, right? The media doesn't have to be little buttons to get curatorial text, right? Or to get related historical events. They could be buttons to present, to show three-dimensional objects, sculptures, right? Easily, just as it's the same technology. I mean, like I did this when I was playing around and learning this platform. Like I'll just put whatever, show a sphere, a globe, right? That's my level of ability to 3D model. And so there's no reason why to take a technology that can do all of that and restrict it to the particular use case that I'm more familiar with, right? And so this is an important part of the development of it, is bringing a broader community, right, with different backgrounds to imagine things that we haven't imagined that people have that being talking or using it or whatever so far, right? Like we've played with lots of other potentially completely different use cases, Christine Hernandez at the LAL, who really worked with a lot on this, right, because of the exhibits. She's working on a database of the interpretation of different Mayan text, right, hieroglyphics, and the meaning of each item in a panel. And my thought, my immediate thought was like the the Google Translation AR, right? The one that overplaces the text to do like an interpretation of these like glyphs, right? I mean, that's like something I wouldn't have considered before, right?
There's
But I would love to have a conversation about this because I don't see like, like it's not as like, oh, people can use it for something later. No, we got to make sure that the concept of the data architecture is agnostic enough to other use cases that I'm not doing, right? Or yeah.
Well, I look forward to, collaborating and talking about this further.
Absolutely.
There's a former MFA student from Tulane named Dave Grieber, and he recently did an AR art project where he put AR sculptures in a number of different locations, and you could go explore them. I put his website in the chat if you want to check it out.
Sculpture.com. Thank you. Open this up here. Yeah, that's a great point, and yeah, I would love. Let's talk soon. It's been on my radar to come have a discussion with you and your folks there.
Any other questions or comments? If not, then we thank you so much, Felipe, for such an informative and rich presentation. Thank you all for joining us, and have a great rest of your day. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.